Scariest and weirdest supernatural experiences. Story 1. I was studying in a Catholic school when this happened. Every school year, we always have a retreat where we stay at an isolated location to do some self-reflection and whatnot. That year, I just had a bad feeling about the retreat house that we will be staying at. It's a really beautiful place, but I got this heavy burden type of feeling when we arrived. I brushed it off because I thought, I'm not familiar with the place yet. The retreat is a 3-day and 2-night stay, so of course we need to sleep there. Our bedroom setup was divided into 2. Boys and girls were separated. The bedroom was pretty big. I mean, there are almost 30 girls in our class. The beds were side by side and no space in between. We can basically hug each other if we want to sleep because of that. There were 3 rows with I think 10 beds each. Anyway, my classmates decided to share paranormal experiences. And after that, they were scared, so they decided to overcrowd the first and the second row. I wasn't really paying attention that time, so I was unfazed. No one was sleeping in the 3rd row, which I'm originally at, but decided to change places because of my friends. My new bed was somewhat at the end of the 2nd row, which was facing directly to the entryway. Since they were all crowded at the other side of the beds, I have 2 beds for myself. On my left side was the extra bed, then the entryway, and on my right was where my friends were. I covered my whole body with a blanket so I could sleep, but I just couldn't. And it's like 2 a.m. in the morning. My friend was also awake, so we were having a quiet chat about anything. And suddenly, I felt a movement beside my foot like someone sat beside it. So I was confused because it's empty. And then it proceeded to, what it felt like, laid down next to me. I didn't dare to look, and I know I wasn't imagining it because the bed shifted. It really felt that someone was there because there was weight. At that point, I was really scared and whispered to my friend that someone was beside me, and she replied that she also felt it. I was frozen in place for a long time before I built up some courage to look. When I did, no one was there and the weight was also gone. I didn't sleep that night. This one could go either way for me. Well, I always tell people to go with their gut when it comes to stuff like this. I do also believe that being predisposed to something will heighten your belief in it. So maybe because OP and their friends were telling scary stories, they were almost looking for reasons to be scared. Story 2. This probably wasn't supernatural TBH, but it was definitely creepy. A few years ago, me and a friend were driving back to my house late at night, around 1:30 a.m. or 2 a.m. Coincidentally, we had passed a local cemetery less than a mile before the part of the road this happened on. We were on this road that isn't a super busy main road, but also isn't hidden or a back road or anything. It's just a normal road, and it cuts through an area where there are houses on both sides of the road, then loops around to a roundabout and splits off into 2 roads that are more like main, well-traveled roads. This was summertime in Alaska, so even though it was the middle of the night, it wasn't pitch black outside, just kind of twilight. So we passed the cemetery, continued on for about half a mile, then came to a little curve in the road. It was a relatively well-lit curve as there were streetlights all around, and a bike path that went into a tunnel. And the tunnel is always very well lit. So anyway, we came around the curve and we were talking, when suddenly this woman stepped seemingly out of nowhere directly into the road. Neither of us saw her before she was suddenly in the road, and she was very creepy looking. She was dressed like a Halloween witch, a long black dress with long sleeves that covered her hands, and she had long, very messy black hair that was sticking out all over her face and torso. She turned to look at us and kind of glared at us, even though she was the one who had just stepped out into the road. And her skin was as white as paper. Her eyes were really dark and beady looking, and she had really heavy black makeup on. I, of course, slammed on the brakes, and me and my friend both exclaimed in surprise when we saw her. She turned away from us after glaring at us and continued crossing the street onto the bike path on the other side. Like I said, the bike path and the tunnel it led to was very well lit, but she just sort of disappeared after that. The whole thing was so strange. I believe in supernatural stuff, but this didn't exactly seem supernatural to me. But it was still very freaky and unexpected. Yeah, maybe it could have been a ghost, but honestly, this also could have just been someone using drugs or something. Sometimes people will live under tunnels or overpasses because it provides them with some shelter. So P probably just freaked her out while driving. Story 3. When I was little, I once woke up to the sound of chanting in some foreign language. I couldn't move at all. The chanting got louder until eventually I felt a cat jump up onto the foot of the bed. We did not have a cat. Our cat passed away a few months ago. I finally broke free of the paralysis and sat up as fast as possible. And there was a cat there. This black short-haired cat. I froze again when I saw it. Then after a second, I felt a hand on my chest and was slammed back into the bed. and was really sent back to sleep. I don't want to say I was knocked down, because while my head did get slammed down, it was into a pillow. So I don't think that could knock me out. But the instant I was slammed back, I was out. I still have no idea if this was a dream or not. It was hyper-realistic, but all of my dreams are hyper-realistic. So much so that I often get events that happen in dreams crossed with events that happened in reality. I also remember passing my bedroom once and seeing a very tall lady in a white dress, with extremely long hair. Was not there on a double take. Saw the lady in white again one time late at night in a different house. I was on my laptop on the couch alone. She was standing on the other side of the room and watching me. We made eye contact. I tried to ask her if she was okay. I looked away for a brief moment because our new cat got into something. And when I looked back, she was gone. I am now 30 and have seen her once more in my new apartment. Another moment where I glanced into my room as I walked by and saw her, but kept walking, and by the time it registered in my mind and I looked back, she was gone. I have never told my mother about this, and she at one point brought up seeing her and described her near perfectly. Prior to me moving out, I am still unsure if I believe in ghosts. If OP keeps seeing her, maybe the ghost is attached to OP and not the house. Maybe that first experience was a dream or even sleep paralysis. But repeatedly seeing that lady could mean that there's actually a ghost following around OP. Story 4. Once when I was 15, I stayed over at my friend's house. She always told me her house was haunted, and I assumed it was all in her head. One night, we were up very late playing video games in her bedroom, and I needed to use the bathroom. I walked into the living room on my way to the bathroom, and some of her little sister's toys were scattered on the living room floor. She had one of those baby dolls that talk when you push its stomach. As soon as I walked past the doll, it said, "Hello? Wanna play?" I froze. The doll continued to rattle off all the various things it was programmed to say. I said to myself that toys do that sometimes. So I went to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, I could still hear this doll talking in the other room. I decided to wait in the bathroom for the doll to stop talking because it was creeping me out. I waited and waited for what felt like probably just several minutes, and the doll never stopped. So I told myself I was being ridiculous and decided to walk back through the living room. When I passed the doll this time, it said, "Bye-bye." So at that point, I ran the rest of the way back to my friend's bedroom. I guess this was actually paranormal, but it sure scared me. I guess it could have been a coincidence that the doll just so happened to greet me when I entered the room and tell me bye when I left. Sometimes toys make noises on their own, but this time it was extra creepy. Story 5. When I was 20, I had a 1-month baby girl and moved out of my parents' home into a little bungalow out in the country. It was just the two of us there. And obviously, since my wee one was so small, she wasn't able to do anything. Things would move around the house, go missing, and then return to an obvious location where they wouldn't have been missed when I looked the first time. Clocks would change on their own. You would hear glass breaking and go to look, and there wouldn't be anything wrong. One time, I was unloading the groceries into the house when I heard people having a conversation behind me. As I turned around to go back to the car, no one else in the house. The baby was with my mom, and there weren't radios or TV on. This was 1992. So sometimes you could pick up another person's frequency on these old Fisher-Price baby monitors. But 1, we were too far away from the neighbors, and 2, I turned it off when I wasn't using it. The second time we heard someone in the house, my mom and I were sitting on the couch, and we heard someone clearing their throat in the front hallway and thought it was my dad. Went to look and he wasn't there. Called him and he hadn't left for my house yet. I hope you moved out of that house, OP, because oh boy does it sound haunted. At least whatever it was wasn't trying to hurt you or your family. Story 6. At least 20 years ago, when I was around the age of 8 to 11, I would always sleep downstairs on the couch next to my dad, because his arthritis made it impossible for him to sleep upstairs in the room. My dad had many health problems, and I wanted to always be close to him if he needed help. The garage door opened slowly from across the room later that night, while everyone but me was asleep. I remember I was hiding under my blanket, trying to make myself look all asleep. At this age, I already believed in the paranormal, and I was too scared to move or even say a single word. I slightly peeked from under the blanket and saw only a complete dark shadow that was so tall I couldn't see its face unless I removed myself from hiding. It stood over my sleeping dad without moving. Every time I hid under the blanket and looked back up, it was standing somewhere different. It went up one stair each time I looked from under the blanket. It made no noise. Was easily 7 feet plus tall. No arms, no legs. And this type of event happened twice while I was a kid. I went to school the next day traumatized. I didn't know how to ask for help because nobody would believe me, especially my own family. Story 7. One day, me and my brother were driving home from my aunt's house. It was quite late, maybe around 1 a.m. There were a few people around because it's London, and people will be up no matter what. But one person in particular stuck out to us. A woman went across the road. She was wearing a dress, which was weird because it was winter and freezing. I remember I instantly went cold when I saw her and froze. So did my brother. There was something so off about this person. We both just went into shock and had the same thought at the same time. I can't remember fully what we both said to each other, but it was something along the lines of, I think that was a ghost, or something like that. It was crazy that we both felt the same thing. We drove home freaked out. And the weirdest part was we couldn't really explain why we both thought that about this person. The worst part was that we didn't realize it at first. But we were driving past a cemetery at the time, which was the direction in which she was walking to. Story 8. When I was about 9 or 10, in the evening, my mom wished me goodnight and left the room. Closed the door. It was about 4 meters away from my bed. So after 10 minutes, someone started talking to me. He said, hello. I was a bit confused, but said hello as well. Then he asked what my name was. I said Lily. And yours? And his name was something I'd never heard before, and it sounded strange. Then he asked me how old I was. I answered and asked back. He said 300 something. Then he said something like, all right, and that's it. The next morning, I asked my mom if my dad played jokes. She laughed, saying, he's not crazy. He's actually not capable of something like that. It freaks me out until now. I'm 29, and I am absolutely sure it was not a dream. I thought someone was standing behind the closet door. But with age, I replayed it in my head and realized that the voice was much closer to me than the door was. I just have no idea what to think, and it bugs me sometimes. This might be one of the few times that I'm hopeful it was a ghost compared to a human. I'd much rather it be a ghost who just wanted a quick chat than someone who broke into the house and was bothering a little kid. Story 9. My uncle had an encounter, and he narrated the story to us. He was invited over by his boss for lunch. The boss's family was out of town, so it was just the two of them. He went to use the washroom while the boss was in the kitchen. But the washroom door was locked from the inside, and it seemed as if someone was having a shower. When my uncle inquired about it to his boss, who was still in the kitchen, he explained in a very calm tone that every day at a fixed time for like 15 minutes. The bathroom door gets locked from the inside and the lights turn on automatically. The tap starts running, and from the noise, it seems someone is taking a bath. Then, after 15 minutes, the door unlocked. The floor is wet but wiped. The lights turn off on their own and the bathroom is good to use. This has been going on in his house for years, and the boss believes that that's how the spirit makes its presence known every day. And if you don't disturb the spirit, it won't disturb you. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.